Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the LinkedIn lunch live stream. I said it correctly for once. What do you know? LinkedIn lunch live stream. So, in case you are new to the channel or new to this live stream, well, the live stream is new because we only started it on Tuesday. But if you're new and you're watching live, jump into the chat and say hello. And if it's your first time, let us know where you're watching from, and we'll jump into LinkedIn here in just a second. So, for those of you who are new, who don't know what this is, basically what we're doing is we're going to go through some different LinkedIn posts that are um, out there, specifically ones that are targeted at junior developers or kind of general for developers. And we'll look at some of those posts and see what they're saying, see if they're helpful, and kind of give you my opinion either on the helpfulness of the of the information or my opinion on whatever it is that they're talking about, if it's a specific topic or something like that. As we go, obviously, feel free to chime in and give your opinions about these things as well, and we'll take a look at those too. We did that on Tuesday through several of these posts. And again, if you have a post or somebody on LinkedIn that you think that we should follow, that we should look at some of their advice, if you have a specific post or an article or something like that, certainly send that to me either in the chat here or leave a comment on the video when it's up later on, or you can always do that in the Dev Mentor Dave Discord server under the channel for the LinkedIn lunch live stream. I almost said it wrong. The LinkedIn lunch live stream. So take a look at that. Send me that information if you have something specifically you'd like me to comment on, and we will do that in a future live stream. So let's go ahead and jump into the posts that I've selected from this morning. And again, one of the reasons why we're doing this through LinkedIn is because there's constantly new content coming from LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is really a good place for you guys as junior developers to build your network. It's a good place for you to get a lot of good advice. There's a lot of people on LinkedIn that are trying to help junior developers, whether it's through information, whether it's through advice, whether it's through just posting links to things that are helpful, whether it's websites or applications or just lots of different things that are on LinkedIn. It's specifically around professional lives, right? So it's not just like Twitter, which could be all kinds of things, or Instagram or something like that. So LinkedIn is designed to be a little bit more professional and hopefully a little bit more helpful for you guys. And so I think that's a good place for us to do some of this evaluation as we take a look at some of this advice here. So let's jump over to, if I can find the right screen here, the first post. All right, so I actually did not originally plan on looking at this post. It just happened to pop up when I was when I was looking at getting everything set up for the live stream this afternoon. It was just on the feed there, and so I went ahead and pulled this one up on this feed, but we've got obviously others that we'll take a look at. This one just kind of struck me because I think it's easy for us to jump to conclusions sometimes when we're looking at information that people are putting out there, or even things that happen to us as developers, especially as we're looking for jobs. If you look, this person is specifically in the recruiting world, and so their information is going to be around finding jobs and interacting with recruiters and employers and things like that. So that's definitely going to be kind of the context here. But I think when I read this, as I looked at what they were saying, as I looked at the example that they gave, was just a reminder that people kind of jump to conclusions sometimes, and I think we need to be careful about doing that. Hey, Muhammad, nice to see you. Welcome. Feel free to jump in if you have any thoughts. Okay, so it says this. Give me your thoughts on this, and this is this screenshot of an email here. It says, "You have time to write out this long email, but you don't have time for constructive criticism. I personally can live without the "it's not you, it's me" reply. Do you all think it's a funny, unique reply to a job application? So, my first thing that I noticed is the assumption of what this email is for. And when you read through the email, we won't take the time to read through the email. You can see it here, or you can go find this post online in LinkedIn. But as you go through, the email is not saying that they're rejecting them. It's actually just saying, hey, by the way, this is an automatic email. In fact, it says it right here. Just so you know, this is an automatic email sent by a mindless robot. All right now, obviously, they're trying to be a little cute with what's going on here. But this is just basically saying, we got your job application. It says later on in the email that we will actually respond to your application. We just need some time for somebody to actually look at it. And this is just an automated thing. And it does say, down here at the bottom, even if we sent you an unpleasant "it's not you, it's me" email, it's not a rejection email. And that's kind of the concept that you're getting here from this post, is that this is a rejection email, and it's really not. And the reason why I say that they feel like it's a rejection email is because they're talking about getting some constructive criticism. And this is something that I see a lot, especially with junior developers. It's something I've even posted about on my main LinkedIn account, about the need and the helpfulness of getting some constructive feedback for especially junior developers as they're going out there, as they're going through interviews. It would be really nice if companies would actually provide some feedback, so that what are some things that you can change, what are some ways that you can grow, how can you better match up with what that company is looking for. So I totally understand where this person's coming from a desire to get some criticism or some feedback. But that's really not the purpose of this email. This email is just a statement saying, hey, we will get back to you. In fact, it says specifically, yes, you will hear back from us. So again, when you get an email, when you get information from somebody, make sure you're carefully reading it. You're carefully trying to understand it, because it can be really easy for us to just jump to conclusions about what is actually going on, and we miss, like this person, I don't know, if they've got another email yet or what, but I mean, it was just posted like 3 hours ago. So, so I don't know what's going to happen with them in this interaction. But if you just actually read it, if you take the time, slow down and actually read it, it's disappointing that this person didn't really understand what was happening here. And if you go through and read some of the comments on this one, you'll see other people don't either. They're just kind of mocking the email. And yeah, the email's written a little funny. It's designed to be cute, but it's also designed not as a rejection letter, which is basically what this person's assuming it is, but it's designed to be, hey, we'll get back to you as soon as we have time, but we're busy right now. So don't just jump to conclusions, especially when it feels like you're being rejected. Take a look, make sure that you're understanding things, and maybe instead of posting it on LinkedIn or something like that, actually respond and ask for feedback. I don't know if this person did or not, but it's obvious by the email nobody's looked at the application yet, so there's no way they could give any feedback or criticism. So just as a rule of thumb, be careful in jumping to conclusions, and make sure that you understand what the other person's actually trying to communicate, especially when you're interacting with companies and looking to be hired. You want to make sure that you understand clearly the information that's being communicated to you, and that you're not jumping to conclusions, because that could present you in a bad light to the company, and that could also present the company in a bad light to you and others if you're telling people things like this and criticizing an email that's not what you're saying that it is. So definitely be careful about how you're viewing. Take the time and look at stuff and understand it completely. But I did also want to look at this too, because it does bring up, again, an important point in this idea of criticism or feedback. I've actually heard from multiple people through some posts that I've put up on LinkedIn as to why companies don't provide the feedback that we would like them to provide. And For some reason, there's an idea out there that if a company provides feedback to an interviewee, that they open themselves up for legal action. And that may be the case. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an HR representative. I'm just a person who would like to provide feedback because I would like to help you out. And I would like for you to get feedback because that's, that's kind of the whole point of this channel, is to help you guys, grow in your journey as a developer. So any feedback that you can get from anybody would be great. But it was interesting that the overwhelming response when I kind of criticized that in the industry was that it's a liability. So, and I don't know how to fix that, because I think most junior devs would love to go out there and ask for feedback, and probably do ask for feedback, especially if you're going through a recruiter or something like that. Um, it's usually good to ask if they have any feedback, but companies, I don't know how to help companies get over the liability issue. I understand that maybe somewhere along the way somebody sued them because they didn't like the information that was given to them, and so they just don't do it anymore. It is rare to find a company that's going to give you uh, constructive criticism, especially in an interview process. Now, you might be able to get some help from like a recruiter who's looking at your application, or looking at your resume, especially if they're a third party recruiter, they're not associated with the actual hiring company. You might be able to get some help there. But even that isn't going to help you from like an interview standpoint. You really need to be able to interview with somebody and walk through what areas you might be weak in. So even though companies are probably not going to give you this constructive criticism that she's looking for, you you can always practice that. And again, that's another place where I think having a mentor can really help you, is being able to have those types of practice sessions or conversations with them, as somebody who's been in the industry and somebody who hopefully has maybe been in some of those conversations, those interview processes. Not all mentors have had that experience, and that's fine. They don't necessarily have to, but they've probably been through the process themselves, and they know kind of what's worked for them over the years, perhaps. So I would work through that process with a mentor as much as you possibly can, so that you can practice and get feedback from somebody. Since the companies probably are not going to do that for you, unfortunately. All right, let's see. Oh, okay. Muhammad says, is there a way that you could provide an example of an ideal LinkedIn profile? That's something that we could probably do in the future. That's a good question. The ideal LinkedIn profile, what that would look like. Um, it would look like a more robust version of your resume, really. And a lot of times these days, especially in our industry, your LinkedIn profile is kind of like your initial resume. In fact, most of the time when we have somebody who's applying for a job at our company, that's the first thing that we tend to go look at, because we're trying to find out what we can about this person. They usually have their job history in there. Um, sometimes you can get some information from other people and recommendations. So it'd be good if you can have some recommendations there. It could save some time from like a recommendations standpoint, if you're just putting it on your resume, or handing it out, handing contact information out uh, for people to double check. That makes it a little bit easier going through LinkedIn. The only problem with that is, you want to be careful about what you're posting on LinkedIn from that perspective. And this is something actually a former coworker of mine and I recently discussed. They're going through a process of interviewing right now, and looking for their next position, and just noticing some of the things that they don't really care for in the process, or just noticing trends and things like that, that they would really like to put out there on LinkedIn as, not just content, but just as, hey, we should think through some of these things, as an industry. But they really don't feel comfortable doing that right now because all that stuff is right there on their profile and they're looking for a job. And no matter how professionally you try to do things, sometimes people are going to take them the way they're going to take them. I mean, that last post was kind of an example of that, right? Like, even though this company's trying to, put a fun foot forward and let you know, hey, we will be getting in contact with you, they took a completely different way. And so that's something to keep in mind when you are building your LinkedIn profile is, especially when you're in the interviewing process. Not that you need to go delete things from your LinkedIn profile, but the things that you are posting at that time may have an impact on how a company views you. And of course, things that you've posted in the past may as well. I'll be honest with you, when I'm looking at a LinkedIn profile, I'm not going through and looking at the post history, so I don't know that that's necessarily a problem. But those are kind of the main things from LinkedIn standpoint. You obviously want your information on there. You want your job history on there. Um, I don't worry about LinkedIn necessarily being as targeted as your resume. Typically on your resume, you're going to want that to be a little bit more targeted as far as the jobs that you've had in the past and the information on there. LinkedIn is a little bit more broad. Um, but I would say you want to follow a lot of the same uh, advice that you're going to find for your resume on your LinkedIn profile. You want to have a good about me section that catches someone's eye. But when I'm looking at that, I'm looking at the about me information. I'm looking at that. I'm looking at the history. Um, Sometimes I'm looking at it to see what's different between LinkedIn and what's on the resume, just for fun. But there's just more things. There's more connections. You never know who somebody is connected to when you're looking at their profile and you see, oh, they're connected to this person that I know. That might be an opportunity for me as a potential employer to go talk to the person that I know and get some, inside information about them. So LinkedIn is a very valuable asset, not just for the interviewee, but the interviewer and the company that's trying to hire you. So you definitely want to make sure that you're connected with people. You want to make sure that you have good information about yourself on there, and and just be careful, especially when you're dealing with the interview process, that you're being professional in what you're posting. Hopefully, you're being professional what you're posting, no matter what. Just because it's LinkedIn, it's a professional, uh, more professional networking site than most of the other social networks. So, all right, let's just look at another one here that I pulled up. Um, okay, so this one caught my eye because of the age factor. And it says this: I turned 50 and the calls for interviews stopped. um, I am 43, so I'm not quite to 50, and I haven't experienced this yet. So it would be interesting to see. I'd love to get other people to comment on this, maybe in the comment section or whatever later on. But I know I gave a video months ago now, talking about an older gentleman that we hired at a former company that I worked for. And when we were having the discussion about whether or not to hire him, I don't remember the age ever coming into play. Now, people may have thought about it, and there may have been other discussions that I was not involved in, but it wasn't a factor that we dealt with. Now, that doesn't mean that other companies won't have the same problem. Um, it is interesting here. It says that based on this recent survey, 62% of Gen X and baby boomer job seekers said they can't land even an interview. Um, that is interesting to me, and I guess my question is, I don't know why, because I don't know that we typically put birthdays on resumes. Um, Maybe the birthday is in like an online. My wife's telling me it's graduation year, but I don't necessarily put. You wouldn't have to put your education on there though. So I don't know. I think there's some things that you can do with your resume. Maybe leave off certain things. Well, anyways, there's going to be some tips here we're going to look through real quickly and just see what I think and if I think that would be helpful. Again, I think it's more about targeting your resume in such a way that you don't need to explain to them how old you are. They're going to see how old you are if they want you for an interview. I don't know. I don't know why you shouldn't be rejected based on your age when they haven't met you yet, because I don't think they should know that information. But let's take a look here. So here's, you've got kind of like a slide deck. Let's see. 3 tips. Bring your resume to 2 pages, 3 at the most. You know, it's interesting. A lot of people actually tell you should only have a single page resume. I've never had a single page resume. It's always, well, I probably did at my very first job, but other than that, I have not had a single page resume for the last 15 years of employment. So I don't I do think there might be a point where it is too long, and I think 3 pages is probably too long. Again, it comes back to targeting your work history around what it is that you're trying to get a job in. Now, if you're jumping into a brand new industry, like as a junior dev, and you're coming in here as somebody who's older, somebody who's my age or older, I mean that can, first of all, that transition can be difficult just because it's the older you get, the harder it is to learn new things. But you do probably have a history, but that job history can be actually a benefit. So I would maybe leave off things that are older. I think 2 pages is probably good. I don't usually see resumes longer than 2 pages for most of the people that are putting in applications at the company I work for. And the company I work for only hires senior level developers, so they have some history. They're going to have multiple jobs on their resume. So the ones that I've seen typically are about 2 pages or less, but most of the time they're about 2 pages. And honestly, what we're really looking for, what I'm looking for when I'm looking at a resume, is where have they worked and what have they worked on? What skills did they use most recently? Do they have skills that would apply to what we're doing or that we might be interested in, even though it may not be a part of the specific role that they're applying for? But yeah, if you've got a resume that's 4 pages long, I would definitely agree with cutting it down. But you would definitely want to keep the relevant information in there as much as possible. If you've got jobs that you don't think are relevant, maybe do a one line of the job and the time frame, just so you don't have a gap on the resume, so people can see that you held a position there if you did. So I would recommend that, but I would definitely highlight, obviously, the jobs that have information or experience that you think is relevant to that specific job. Let's see. We got some more things here. It says Muhammad, sorry. Do connections really matter when it comes to career success? Absolutely. Um, I think I did a video not too long ago talking about the best way to get a job. The number one way to get a job is by knowing somebody at the company, by a company referral. That there's lots of ways to get interviews, there's lots of ways to put your resume in, but statistically speaking, the best way to get a job is to know somebody at the hiring company. So that's why things like LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn obviously is going to be a little bit less of the connection that you want, just because typically you connect with a lot of people that you don't really know, right? So when we talk about referrals inside of a company, they're going to be more dependent upon people that they actually know, that they've met, that they've talked to, that they have a relationship with. So obviously those are going to go to the top of the pile, but anytime you have some sort of connection with somebody, especially if you take that connection to another level on LinkedIn and message somebody and get to know them or have a coffee with them. Um, some of the best recruiters, third party recruiters that I've worked with, were recruiters that actually met me face to face. And not all of them had a job opportunity for me, but they were better connections than just the ones that I have, you know, probably hundreds connected on LinkedIn. So, but connections are still the way to go. Every time I'm looking for a position, um, I contact all the recruiters that have talked to me recently on LinkedIn. Um, because the more connections I have, the more possibilities are going to be out there when I'm looking for a position. So I say connections absolutely matter and are probably the most crucial thing that you can do to help you from a job standpoint, from a finding a job standpoint. I'm not sure if you mean that they're not willing to invest. Let me know what you try to re-clarify that thing about your parents in the traditional university. They're concerned about the lack of they're okay. Never mind. You did. They're concerned about the lack of connections. What do you think? I think um, it depends on what you're going for. Well, so there's multiple factors, right? So it depends on. I'm gonna get rid of this since we're talking about other things. There we go. Okay, so it depends on what you're looking for. Um, if you're going into like web development, right, or something like that, and you are you're not necessarily needing a university degree for what you do. So there's obviously some jobs out there that you need a university degree. Sometimes even depending on where you live, you might need a university degree to get a better job. Uh, but generally, especially in development, I don't. I put your university degree pretty low on the totem pole because you're going to learn a lot of things and pay for learning a lot of things at a university that are not necessarily applicable to what you're going to be doing on the job. Um, and that's why I would recommend a boot camp, but I would also recommend a lot of your own learning and study. In fact, my typical flow that I would recommend is that somebody go to YouTube and start working on learning the things that you want to learn there. And then when you feel like you've got some of the basic understanding of concepts and things like that, then maybe look at jumping into like a boot camp or some other form of training that's specific, not a university training, but specific to the job that you're looking for. For example, here in Kansas City, we have several companies. The big one that I can think of is Centric, and they're involved in IT training. They do lots of different IT training, but it's very specific for the specific job. And it's not cheap, but it's shorter and it's cheaper than going to school. And at the end of the day, even if you go to a university, that's not going to guarantee that you have tons of connections. Even if you go to a boot camp, it's not a guarantee you're going to have tons of connections. In fact, it's interesting to me some of the things that boot camps will often say, "Hey, this is how good we are. We're going to help you connect with people in the industry," and maybe that happens to some degree, but for most of the junior devs I've talked to um, that have gone through a boot camp or something like that, it doesn't always happen that way. Now, there are some, I think of like Centric, who is really connected to companies here in the Kansas City area. And so somebody like that has more of those connections might be more helpful. But I truly believe at the end of the day, they're two separate things. There's learning and then there's connecting or networking, right? And you have to do both of them kind of at the same time once you've got the basics under your belt from a learning standpoint. Learning starts obviously, but as you're learning, you want to start building some of those connections, building interactions with mentors and things like that. So I would definitely say that connections is a high priority. I wouldn't recommend university unless you live in a place where it's almost required. I've talked to people from different countries. And I know a lot of times in other countries, you pretty much have to have a university degree to get a technical job. Not because you need it to do the job, but that's just, they just won't hire you unless you have it. So if you live in a place like that, then you might consider going to university. But I do think you want to be careful to make sure that you are spending time building a network, getting to know people, and as much as possible, actually getting to know people from a conversational standpoint. Like talk to them, like we're doing now, right? Like actually have interactions with people, and because when you actually interact with somebody, they're going to remember you. You know, there's people that I see posts on LinkedIn on my normal LinkedIn profile, and they're people that I've talked to face to face over the interwebs, and and so I'm more interested in the things that are going on with them um, because I've talked to them. There's people that I've interacted with in the Dev Mentor Dave Discord server that I've actually talked to people about potentially interviewing them because I've had interaction with them in other ways. So connections really are, again, probably the most important factor when it comes to getting a job. Now, can you get a job without them? Sure, absolutely. People do it all the time. But even statistically, you're much more likely to get a job through a referral from somebody that works at the company. So if you have a specific company you want to work for, try to befriend and get to know people, network with people who work there, and try to build relationships with them. All right, welcome. Is it? Sorry, got my old man glasses on. Is it Sash? Let me know if I'm saying that correctly. From Durban, South Africa. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you. So let me jump back over to our LinkedIn post that we're looking at, talking about old people like me trying to break into the development world here. The first point here on this little slide deck from this post was to shrink your resume down. Obviously, people who have been around for a while have big resumes. I do agree with that. I haven't experienced it a whole lot, but yeah, you definitely want to focus on the relevant pieces of information for sure. This I think is really good. So use your executive summary to show your results and expertise. Um, I fully agree with this because all the resumes that I see, and again, I see resumes from a lot of senior devs who have expertise in the industry, and even with the expertise in the industry, they often fail to really give me as the interviewer, as the hirer, as the yeah, whatever, as the company, they fail to give me a quick reason why I should hire them. You know, like that's really what your executive summary is for. That's what that kind of top paragraph, like that it's designed for you to sell yourself. And if you're trying to break into the industry, especially as somebody who's a little bit older like me, if you're in your 40s and 50s and 60s and you're trying to change jobs, um, think about your experience and think about how your experience can help you in the role that you're applying for. And this is another area where it can be really cumbersome and annoying, but it can be really effective as well to update your resume or have different copies of your resume for each of the positions that you're applying for. Because you really want to, I love how this points out results and expertise. So it's not just, hey, I know these 18 different languages, right? It's this is how I've used it, or this is how I've helped other companies be successful. If you can show me not just that you know something technical, but that you are an asset, that either maybe you're laid off or whatever, that doesn't necessarily need to be in there. That's an interview question, right? But if you can show me that you have been an asset to another company, that is much more interesting to me as an interviewer than just a list of all the different things that you know, right? I want to know kind of what you've experienced and how you have helped other companies, and why you think that you would be helpful to me. Because at the end of the day, as an employer, I'm looking for somebody who's going to be able to help the company grow. I'm not just looking for somebody who's there to do a bunch of tasks. Um, Even in a development role, I want somebody who's not just looking at tickets and doing the work. I want somebody who can think through problems and think through issues and find solutions, and even look at the overall reality of the project and offer solutions that nobody's looking for yet. Things like that. I want to see how helpful you are to the company, and that's a good place for that information, is in that executive summary. It's a good place to catch somebody's eye. And again, we were talking about earlier that your LinkedIn profile, that should be kind of a similar thing. You want to try to grab people's attention, and show them that you are somebody that is useful. All right, so then it says, as a Gen X or baby boomer job seeker, your results and expertise are your secret sauce. Yeah, absolutely. Find the things that make you unique in your experiences. And again, I think some of that can go in your executive summary. So I would agree with that. Let's see. Number 3. Remove graduation dates. My wife and I were just mentioning that a few minutes ago. She was listening in as we went. I was saying I don't know why people would know how old you are, and my wife told me she used to work in HR actually. So she told me graduation dates, and here you go. All right, remove graduation dates and years of early experience from your resume and LinkedIn. Yeah, if you're concerned about ageism, I could see. Sorry, I got a fly or something. If you're concerned about ageism, I could see why you would do that from your LinkedIn profile as well. Again, I'm not looking at your profile on LinkedIn to find out your age. Um, Maybe it's just enough to remove the graduation stuff from your profile if you're concerned about that. I also don't care about where you graduated from, because to me it doesn't matter. But for some people, it may matter depending on the job that um, you are that you're applying for in the company and the people in the company. I mean, that this is obviously a real issue. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a post like this, right? So, I do love what it says here. These dates have no relevance to the value that you can deliver, right? So, that's 100% true. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when you graduated from high school or from college or from your graduate work. Like, none of that really matters. What matters is what is your experience and your ability to do the job. And so if you're putting information out there that's causing you to potentially be pushed aside because of your age, then that is, I would agree, get those off your resume, because it doesn't really matter. And LinkedIn, maybe take it off of LinkedIn too. I would just remove maybe the education portion of LinkedIn. I wouldn't worry about the jobs so much. The experience, early experience, I think you could leave that there. But I would get rid of the graduation dates for sure. All right. And that's basically it. Was that helpful? Sure. Okay. All right. Let's see. What other questions? There's a few more things on here. Okay. Question about how salary typically progresses. Um, I'll be honest with you. In much of my experience, salary doesn't typically progress unless you force it to progress. I don't remember if we talked about this on Tuesday or not, or maybe it's just a conversation that I've had with somebody else recently. But um, when it comes to increasing your salary, that's something that you have to take control of. Unless you get into a big organization that has a well thought out long career path already in place, and um, they have like specific merit increases all the time, and they tell you exactly what the path is. There really is no standard path for increasing your salary. Theoretically, it should increase with your experience, but at the end of the day, you have to remember that employers are not looking to lose more money, and so really, it's on you to help yourself. It's on you to make sure that you are getting an increase when you think you should get an increase. Now, maybe that's annually, maybe that's longer than annually. It just depends on how big of an increase you get at a time. I will tell you this: every time I have changed jobs, whether that was because I was laid off, or whether that's because I was leaving another company and going to a new company, every time I've changed positions, I've gotten an increase in salary. And that's not because everybody was generous. Okay. It's because I was not, I wanted to make sure that I increased, especially if I'm leaving and going to another job. Obviously, I definitely want an increase in salary, but I did have experience, and I wanted to make sure that the experience that I had was being recognized in what I earned. And so every time that I changed jobs, I made sure and get a salary increase in that new job. Now, my very first job in development, I I had to ask for a raise. There was no process for getting a raise. In fact, this job I think is the only job that I can think of that I have had a raise without asking for it. So, and I've had multiple jobs. All right. Um, Now some of them were contract work, things like that. So that's going to be a little bit different. But from in my experience, it's very rare for your company to come to you and say, "Hey, we think we need to increase your salary." Um, so it's going to be on you to make sure that you're pursuing those things. And we did talk about this Tuesday because we talked about how whether or not you should accept a matching offer from your current company if you're leaving another company, going to another company. And so again, you should have those conversations with your current company. And if they can't do that, they can't do it. And maybe it's time for you to find something else. But that's really on you to make sure that your compensation is keeping up with your experience. Most companies are not going to go after that for you because again, it's hey, the cheaper they can get you and keep you, the better for the company long term. So there you go. But there is no standard progression. Just like there's really no like standard progress of titles either. Every company has their own set of titles. Some of them are based on how much they pay you. Like uh, developer 1, 2, 3, whatever. Like so, they have all kinds of weird titles for different people, and a lot of times in those instances, they're bigger companies and they have them based off a pay scale, things like that. So so really, at the end of the day, it's on you. You need to make sure um, that you're keeping track of that for yourself, and that you're keeping yourself where you need to be financially, because the company is probably not going to do it. All right, and then another question here: what are your thoughts on AI and how it will impact the software development industry? All right, give me 1 second here. I need to close my door. Okay, sorry about that. Sometimes the family forgets what's going on up here. So I don't know if you guys could hear any noises, but I could hear noises and it was throwing me off. So, question was, what are your thoughts on AI and how it will impact the software development industry? Actually, believe it or not, I have. This was not planned. All right, I actually have a LinkedIn post here that I wanted to at least run through some of the initial thoughts on it here. So let's take a look. All right, so the statement here is that AI won't replace humans. I wholeheartedly agree with that statement. AI will not replace humans. It will not. Um, AI itself will not take developer jobs. Um, you're not you're not struggling to get a job because a company is using AI. You're not getting kicked out of your job because companies using AI. I agree with this post completely. It says, but humans with AI will replace humans without AI. So At the end of the day, AI is a tool. It's not a replacement. AI will make it easier, and it already has in many ways made it easier for developers to do their job faster and more accurately. We've seen that growing over the years with all the different tools that are out there now and that have been out there in the past. So, to answer your question, I agree with this post here that it's not about AI replacing humans or fearing that AI is going to keep you from getting a job. I think what you need to understand is that you need to know how to use AI to help you do the job effectively. This person's dealing with a specific industry here. If you go and you look down, it's got a video, I think, of, just helping humans track, bad quality, things like that. I don't know, you look at this video, I don't know if this is helping, if this is making a determination that the human couldn't see, potentially, so I don't know if the human is being notified by the system in any way or if they're still doing it manually. It's hard to tell from this video what actually is going on. But it is interesting that it can be helpful, right? What makes this even more impactful is if it could actually remove the items for the human by themselves. Maybe that's getting rid of the human's job to some degree. But at the end of the day, especially for developers, can it write code? Absolutely, yeah, it can write code. But you have to remember, it's writing code that it's been trained on, that was written by humans. So you definitely are not going to be replaced by AI, but you will be replaced by humans using AI. So this is a hard thing for me as a mentor dealing with junior developers. My typical recommendation for junior developers is to not worry about AI, probably at least for the first 6 months of your journey. Maybe even longer, depending on what the process is that you're going through to learn. I would recommend that you spend most of your time learning the actual coding, because at the end of the day, no matter how much code AI writes, you still need to be able to understand that code and recognize whether it's a good fit or what you need to manipulate in order to do what it is you're trying to do, in order to make it fit within the rest of the code base that you're working on. One of the downfalls of AI is it doesn't actually think. All AI does is aggregate information and spit out a response based on the prompts that you give to it. So most people are not very good at describing what they want. This is why I think we're not going to lose developers or development agencies, because customers don't know how to describe the problems most of the time. It takes a developer who understands code and can interact with them in such a way that they understand the problem that they're facing to be able to help them find the right solution. And I don't think AI will ever fully get to that point, because again, AI doesn't actually think. Does it do a really good job of what it does? Absolutely. And that's why, again, it's a good tool. And I think eventually in your journey, you need to learn how to use those tools, but you need to know what those tools are doing to help you. You need to know the underlying code and job, not just a bunch of tools. So let me give you an example of this. That's not a normal development problem. When you look at the world of WordPress, people have a lot of opinions about WordPress developers, and there are really kind of two types of WordPress developers, or people who call themselves developers with WordPress. If you're not familiar with WordPress, go look it up. It's a content management system built in PHP. It's been around for, I don't know how long, decades now. I think over 20 years, at least over. I've been using it since the mid 2000s. So I think it's been around for probably close to 20 years now. And so if you're not familiar with it, take a look at that. But one of the interesting things about that is, as WordPress grew, WordPress allows you to create plugins and create themes to make it easier to add functionality to your WordPress website. Well, what that created was kind of multiple layers of people who call themselves developers. And so you have some people who are WordPress developers who actually go in and they develop those things. They write PHP and HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and unfortunately jQuery, I think still. So they actually write the code. They actually interact with the code and they build things that work with WordPress. And then there's another group of people who call themselves WordPress developers that might know some HTML and CSS, but for most of what they do, they're just putting plugins in place and themes in place, and they're mostly just attaching things to WordPress, not actually writing code or developing things on it. And so WordPress has kind of gotten a bad rap over the years for being a lower level of development because there's this dichotomy in the different types of developers in the WordPress world, where in reality, WordPress is just another PHP framework. And the people who are actually developing on it, they're real developers. But unfortunately, they kind of get hit with this you're not a real developer view because the word WordPress is attached to them. So I do think we have to be careful when it comes to AI, understanding that just because somebody uses AI doesn't mean that they still know what they're doing. So yes, AI will not replace you. Yes, humans using AI will replace you, but it's more than just human using AI. It's humans using AI correctly, especially in the world or the industry of development and in my world, application development, web application development. So there are going to be people who can't get a job because they don't know the AI tools and they're not as fast as they could be. But there are also going to be people who are going to lose their jobs because of maybe they misrepresented themselves a little bit based on what they can and can't actually do with AI. And I'll be honest with you, I've seen a lot of bad AI code. It's going to still be a while before it's really writing code that you want thrown out there in production on a consistent basis. So absolutely, I would definitely encourage you to learn AI, to learn how to integrate AI tools in your process. But I wouldn't fear it for sure. Let's see. I'm going to get rid of this here and just answer a couple more questions here. Can you share what technologies new developers should focus on more? One that comes to mind is AI skills. Which technologies they should focus on more? Typically, what I would tell a junior developer is do some research on the companies that are hiring near you. Now, obviously, depending on where you live, you have the opportunity to work for companies all over the world potentially. But the reason why I say focus on what companies around you are hiring for is because that's going to be probably more likely to work for a company locally than you are internationally. So what I would say is see what companies are actually hiring for. One of the problems that we have right now with the junior developer world is that boot camps are pumping out a lot of the same thing. They're pumping out full stack devs that are mostly front end devs, and they're all JavaScript, they're all React. It's very rare to find somebody learning other languages as a junior developer. But if you look at the job market, you're probably going to see a lot more other things out there than just Node and JavaScript and React and things like that most of the boot camps are pushing out. You're going to find people looking for Go. You're going to find people looking for Java, for PHP, excuse me, for C#.net, right? So you're going to find lots of other skills out there that you probably don't even know about. And that doesn't even include things like DevOps and design and project management and all kinds of other things that are part of the development world that you're not going to get from a boot camp. And so what I would say is look at the job postings that are out there more in your area than anywhere else, but look at the skills that they're looking for, and that's the direction that I would say go in. I think that's one of the reasons why we have so many problems with junior devs not finding positions, because there just aren't that many positions that meet what they're being taught. And so that's what I would say. And when it comes to AI skills, I would say just learn how to ask better prompting questions, and that just takes time, because even your prompts have to be adjusted. Your prompts have to be engineered in such a way that you're going to be able to help AI help you. So when you're using AI, definitely spend time working on how you are talking to the chat GPT or whatever it is that you're working with. um, I would say most of your help's probably going to come from something like Copilot or something like that. That's going to be more of a suggestion option. And things like ChatGPT, where you have the ability to query documentation, um, that would probably be your best focus from an AI integration standpoint. Unless you're looking to actually be an AI developer, in which case you want to obviously learn all the things around, interacting with AI, or building AI, if that's what you're actually looking to do. Um, but when it comes to what's best for long-term growth, honestly, I would pick a back-end language. I would pick a back-end language that's been around for a long time. Java, PHP, C Sharp. um, Go is very popular, it seems, right now, and has a pretty good following. Um, but those back-end languages, those are core, um, enterprise level application languages, and those are not going away anytime soon. So I would, although there's tons of new things coming out, and enjoyable things and fun things, I would highly recommend that you maybe go a little old school if you want something that's a little bit more guaranteed for longevity, because Node is really popular, but I don't see a lot of big name companies jumping into the Node space. They're still sticking with, Java and .NET and PHP and things like that. So I would not necessarily recommend that you put all your eggs in the basket of JavaScript. um, it's in a lot of newer things, but I don't think it's definitely, um, the thing that you want to do long term. All right, let's see. We're about up on time because we're only doing this for about an hour. So let me take a look. It looks like the feed might be a little messed up, so I apologize for that if you're having trouble. Let's see. Let's see if there's anything else on my end that I can kill. Well, we're about to jump off anyway, so hopefully you guys can still see what's going on and hear me. But let me take a look at this one final thing here. Um, right now, I don't think AI will be able to do human decision making. Yeah, absolutely not. Um, Everyone comes from a different viewpoint. Absolutely, that's gonna make all the difference. Honestly, at the end of the day, is your experience as a human. Um, so absolutely. Python is a good one, especially if you're going to go into DevOps, or you're going to go into, um, things like, AI and stuff like that. Python is a pretty big player in that market. Um, so I would say Python is fine. Um, but again, I would look and see what people are hiring for right now, because a lot of these things are going to be fine long term. But the ones that are going to be the best long term are going to be the ones that have been going for long term, for the most part, and are not going away. So, um, that's what I would suggest. But Python is a good language. There's lots of different applications for it. So, you could it's certainly not wrong to jump into that world either. So, um, but again, I would look and see what people are hiring for, because more than likely they're going to keep hiring for that in the future. So that's going to be your best bet. Anyway, kind of went a little bit different direction than just LinkedIn, but that's fine. That's what we're here for. We'll start with LinkedIn and we'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. So thanks for jumping on the live stream today. It's time for me to shut it down. I got to get back to work. So thanks for jumping in here. Hopefully it's been a help to you on your development journey. And if so, if you would hit the like button for me, I'd really appreciate it. Feel free to share it with other people. Tell other people about the live stream. I love interacting with you guys on the chat. So thanks for jumping in here. We'll be here every Tuesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. Central United States time, unless I make an announcement and have to leave for some other reason. So thanks for jumping in here. Hopefully it's been a help, and I will see you guys on the next one if I can find my logo. There we go. All right, I'll see you guys.